Well, hello to all of you watching and tuning in with us wherever you are. We often say good morning, good afternoon and good night because we know we have so many amazing members of our community tuning in from all over the world, which is still super exciting. Now, of course, welcome to a Digital First, a banking transformation series where I get to co-host with my favourite co-host, Mick Philippou, who's the CEO of Sandstone Technology. Mick, great to see you. How are you doing?
Hello, Alex, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers. Well, look, it's absolutely wonderful day here in sunny Sydney, though we're feeling the cold a little bit inside. And it's wonderful to be back talking all things Digital First, the banking transformation series. We've got another very special guest today who's exceptionally impressive in terms of her banking executive career, which spans more than 20 years in the Australian banking market. Now, for those of you that don't know Marnie Fletcher, allow me to indulge a little as I walk through her career biography. Marnie joined Defence Bank in February 21 this year as Chief Member and Growth Officer. She brings with her 23 years of experience in banking across a range of financial institutions, including Esanda, ANZ, Westpac and ME Bank, whilst having worked with a broad spectrum of customers from institutional through to retail. Her passion is for the everyday Australian and helping people create financial freedom into retirement. Marnie has had an extensive experience delivering transformation programs, risk management, driving growth and leading teams at scale. She now leads Defence Banks Frontline teams as well as their lending operations and member services divisions. These teams have a direct line to their members. Now, at home, Marnie's a mum to 3 daughters and is an active role model in helping leaders and teams to find energy in the creation of harmonious work-life integration and being the best version of themselves. Welcome to the program, Marnie. You have such an exceptionally impressive background. Tell us a little bit about that light bulb moment when you knew that you were going to be a banker.
Great first question, Mick. Look, it was probably pretty young, to be honest. One of my most vivid childhood memories is as a kid with my brother walking down the street, and we would pick flowers from our neighbours' gardens and then consequently go and knock on their doors and sell them to them, you know, for 20 cents a bunch or whatever. And I just remember this obsession with, you know, making money, saving money. When I was 12, my dad got me into the share market. My first shares ever were CSR back in the day. And so I've always kind of been obsessed by finance and financial management. And then going through high school, for whatever reason, I was obsessed with ANZ. I just loved them and I went, I want to work there. And throughout university, you know, that was my aspiration, and was really proud to get onto their graduate program as part of Esanda and had a 15-year career at ANZ, which is one that I certainly cherish as part of my banking history.
When you were picking that, sorry, one quick question, Alex. When you were picking those flowers, you weren't taking those flowers off the same neighbours' yard, but you were then selling them back to them, their own flowers.
Yeah, sometimes we did, to get a system in place where we had to remember where we picked them so we didn't sell them back, because we did have one neighbour who got a bit cranky with us and refused to give us the 20 cents but asked for her flowers back. I do remember that.
Was it a full refund policy at the time?
Yeah, it was probably a drop and run, actually, back when we were 6 years old.
This just cracks me up, right? Because one, I love that your entrepreneurial business career started so early. But also, you and I were just joking before we hit record. We had another one of our fabulous guests that I couldn't recall, Mick, who we were kind of being a bit tongue in the cheek about when was the early passion for banking. She's like, well, I think I was 5. So you are out there. So look, first of all, welcome to the show. And as you know, and all our listeners know, we do go on tangents and it's very conversational, right? So I'd love to go a bit deeper into that. Is always our opening question about kind of, you know, tell us a bit about you in your own words. Can you elaborate a bit? Because I think there's a couple of threads already that I'm super interested in. One, I love that your dad got you into the share market. That makes me want to talk about, so important about financial literacy at a young age. And there's a whole thing there that I'd love to ask about. But from a career perspective, maybe first, I mean, so you're obsessed with ANZ. I'm sure they'll love to hear that. What was your career path that's led you to your amazing role now at Defence? Because all our our listeners, as Mick knows, it's funny, so many people ask us, well, how did you plan out your career? And for me, my career was very almost opportunistic and quite organic. I'd kind of take the next opportunity and something else had happened. Like I've never been someone who was really very structured in that, but I know people are. So I would love to hear a bit about what was your pathway to the current role?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Alex, because through primary school and high school, I was quite a shy person, really sort of hid behind others. And then I started work at Esanda and had the absolute honour of working with Elizabeth Proust, who you're probably familiar with, just probably one of the most amazing leaders I've ever had exposure to. And she, I still remember being on the graduate program. I met her briefly at a function, and then I think it was about four months later, I was walking down Collins Street. I think I'd just been to Hague's to get a chocolate frog. It was my obsession, working up to the top of town. And I passed Elizabeth and I said, oh, hello, Elizabeth, really shyly. She goes, oh, hello, Marnie, how are you doing? I was like, oh, my gosh, she knew who I was. And she was just a very special person. She took the time to get to know her people, to understand their strengths, and really then promote that and help people. And so my original thinking was, oh, I'm going to become a banker. And then I moved into my first leadership role and went, oh, hang on, this banking thing is cool, but actually what's cooler is leadership. And so that's then from there where my passion really grew, and certainly with Elizabeth Proust's support as well, which began my obsession with how do I create high-performing teams, how do I inspire and motivate people. And I think it was that focus that then just took me on this really weird zigzaggy journey through ANZ at the time, through different customer segments, from insto through to retail, and through different product partners as well in merchants and specialised leasing and all sorts of areas, without necessarily having a vertical niche. But where I do see my niche is absolutely in leading people to perform and helping create environments that encourage people to be their best.
Oh, so much there, but Mick, I'll let you have the next question. Marnie, we do fight over the next question that we ask, so I'm just warning you.
Yeah, there needs to. I think StreamYard need to introduce like a baton changeover so we can get better coordination on asking questions. But no, Marnes, one question I'd like to ask and take it to. So now you're leading for Defence Bank, and obviously this program's around, I guess, digital transformation. The landscape's changed a little bit. It's been fast-tracked in terms of us being in a lockdown environment, or being in a more restrictive environment over the last 18 months. I know you're a values-driven, major focus on people. When you think about what customers have, how they've driven a need for a flight to digital, how do the people at Defence and any of their leadership roles you've played, how do they play a role, and how important are they in terms of being able to facilitate any change, and in this case a digital change?
Yeah, so I think first of all, your point around this COVID world we're in, and certainly much more comfort with customers and members in a digital environment, is absolutely true. But I think there's this nice marriage of the digital and analog world that still exists that we need to acknowledge, and so it's a combination of both. And for us at Defence Bank, our strategy around our transformation is very much people-led, technology-enabled, and the people are certainly what is going to make our transformation work or not work. And that's something we've learned very early on in the process. I think I touched on in the early interview that, as a mutual bank, our purpose for transformation is a little bit different. As a mutual, we are member-owned, and so our members are our shareholders, compared to a bank where the shareholders are not necessarily customers. And so with that, certainly our service and how we work with our members is probably a little bit more personal and certainly more community-oriented. For us, we have a vocational bond with the Australian Defence Force. That's what makes us unique at Defence Bank, and we know Defence better than anyone else. And so with that, not only do we need to think about transformation, but we need to think about those unique aspects of our members in terms of how we automate, because not everything's going to work easily. For our members, as an example, they move from, they start young at a recruit base, and they move, soon after into a training base, and then into an active base. And each phase of that journey in their life and their financial life poses different opportunities and challenges. And so how we automate needs to reflect that member life journey as well. And our people know that better than anyone else. So in terms of your question, Mick, how are our people involved? A lot of programs and ones I've seen in the past at other banks, you tend to get a project team together and you get a SME from each business to contribute and add that subject matter expertise. We've done things a little bit differently at Defence Bank, firstly because we can, because we're a little bit smaller, but also because we think it's the right thing. And that is that our people are actually a core part of our design process. We've really incorporated our people's thoughts and ideas and feedbacks into the design of our new origination platform, holding well over 50 quite in-depth workshops across the bank to ensure that we get that input. And that poses challenges as well. I think for any bank, you've got to run BAU at the same time as transforming, and so ensuring that your people have that capacity, both mental and physical, to contribute is important.
So, Marnie, yes, absolutely. It's so great, because I know we want to go deeper into this whole piece about organisational readiness and exactly what we're really talking about, unsurprisingly, is people. So how do you mentioned before, which of course I lent in, because that your niche is leadership, your passion for high performing teams, and the environment as well, which is such a big piece of it, isn't it? I think the three of us would agree. I mean, we've led a lot of teams, and for me, it's a craft that you just keep evolving and keep getting better at. It's something that, for me, like being a leader of other human beings, it's not like you ever stop and go, great, well, I've kind of got all the experience now. Like, you're always learning. And environment is such a big part, because for mine, even if you have the best people in the world, but an environment that's not working, or the culture's not a fit, or the wrong, like, there are so many variables to whatever high performance means, and having a really engaged group of amazing people. So for you, around the environment and making sure that your people do have the energy and the mental readiness and the physical readiness and are engaged, like, what are some of the things that kind of over your career and now that you find is what you focus on to make that happen?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Alex. We had at our last board meeting the Honourable Dr. Brendan Nelson attend, and we're talking about leadership, and he said, leadership can't be taught, but it can be learnt. And I really reflected on that in terms of my journey. And I've attended a plethora of leadership courses, I think we all have, and I've certainly valued each and every one of them. But, what I reflect on most in terms of where I've grown and stretched as a leader is through experience, and through also watching others' experiences too. And probably more particular, it's my failures where I've learned the most. And I'm certainly not perfect, and none of us are, but, those moments in time have really resonated with me. Through all of that, and particularly environments myself where I've had a leader acting in a certain way, the one thing for me that is absolutely critical in leadership around that environment is creating psychological safety. And I think when that very specific thing breaks down, culture breaks down, and the organisation breaks down. And so that is the number one thing for me in my leadership, is creating an environment where people feel safe to try things and fail, and know that there's not going to be, recrimination and repercussion, but they'll be coached and supported to act differently next time. And an environment where people feel like they can be vulnerable and share where things aren't working well for them. I think there's a lot of organisations, and I've worked at some of them, where people are afraid to say, hey, this is not working so well, and I think I'm failing, because they're scared of that, because, their job's on the line, or, they don't get their performance outcome, etc. So psychological safety is absolutely number one. And so it is in leading this transformation program as well, because the transformation, obviously the system is really important, but surrounding that is a change of roles for people. There's a whole lot of cross-skilling and upskilling that we're going to be doing. There's changes in processes. And you know what? I don't reckon we're going to get it all right day one. I reckon we're going to fail a little bit and learn along the way. And, you know, for me as a leader of a big portion of our team at Defence Bank, my people need to know it's okay if it doesn't work. We will fix it. You just got to speak up and let me know, and in that way we can address it and work together towards getting the right outcome.
Can I just make a quick follow-up comment, Mick? I love it. I mean, and we all do. It's so important because I think around this psychological safety, I think so many people say it, but I think some of the most important parts about that is that you are literally on this is why these conversations are so important, right? Because you're on this show saying, you know what, we're not going to get it all right. We don't know. We're designing intentionally. We're doing all the right things, but stuff happens. And for me, I always love hearing that. And I think for your people watching as well, it's just another reinforcement. Like for me, that's what this sense of psychological safety is, because actions and words are marrying up, right? And we're talking about it and we're saying, look, we kind of don't know. Not to mention we're in a global pandemic and all the unknowns that throws up. So I just wanted to say, like, I love that you're saying that, because I think sometimes we underestimate the power of people hearing those words. Just like I think with you, with Elizabeth, when she knew your name, that's had such an impact, which is why role models are so powerful, aren't they? When you just see such a simple thing in one way has had such an impact on you. And I think this conversation is super important. So I love that. Over to you, Mick.
No, thanks, Alex. And as an extension of that, so Marnie, and you touched on this in terms of the change and the change for people in their role, their function, some of their responsibilities, and then the learning. And this is the learning of new skills as a result of new processes, etc. We've heard this from a range of different leaders that have led transformations, and they've spoken about the human element being the most important to support people to be able to learn new skills. Invariably, they've done things for a quite a long period of time. They're on autopilot. They do it exceptionally well. Now, all of a sudden, we're asking people to do something different, a new skill, and obviously need to be retrained through that. And so I think maybe as an extension, in terms of how you create psychological safety for your people, you know, maybe just an example of how you do that when you're leading quite a significant change for people that will be affected and impacted in terms of what their skills are today and where they need to go to tomorrow, and just knowing that they can be safe as they go through learning those new skills.
So I think there's probably two aspects to it, Mick. One is the people feeling ready to implement the change and run with it. And the second, which is really important, is the shared belief in their capability and the capacity to implement and embed the change. And so you've got to work from both angles. So there's a couple of things that we're doing very intentionally. And the first I've already touched on, which is the fact that our people are very heavily involved in the design process. So they are already part of the solution rather than the solution being handed to them. And so across the organisation, you know, again, we are small and we are nimble, and so, you know, we are lucky in some ways to be able to do that. But, you know, almost every member of our organisation has been able to touch and feel the transformation in some way, and are therefore very excited by it. The second is around storytelling. Storytelling is really important, and so for those of our team who have been involved, you know, we're certainly encouraging the stories around, you know, what this is going to mean. So for our home lenders, as an example, our mobile lenders, you know, at the moment it takes them, you know, between 8 and 10 hours to package up an application to first submit, you know, into system, and that's, you know, getting all the documentation, of course, the income and expense verification, and all that other stuff we need to do. And, you know, the result or the end outcome will be, it'll be a 2 to 3 hour process. And so we're really talking about that. Well, so that means you've got another 4 to 5 hours. You know, what do we do with that time? And it's really exciting, you know, because our people are talking about the different types of conversations they can have, as well as the ability to touch more members, which is also really exciting. So storytelling would be the other one. And then thirdly, What's really important is that this program is not this secret little, thing going on in a corner of the level 4. Rather, it is a really open dialogue across the whole organisation. And so we do run, with myself as sponsor of the program and our program manager, a series of communications on a monthly basis where we give a bit of an update on the program and really open it up to the audience to ask questions on the program and extend their curiosity.
I love that because they're and I love that you talk about storytelling, Marnie. Yay, because this is a passion which I know Mick shares as well. It's this importance of, as you say, sharing stories and the narrative. And I wanted to ask you about, which is probably kind of an obvious question, but it's so fascinating to us and to the audience as well. So what we're talking about is whatever the transformation is, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking about all the things we're talking about now. How do you get the hearts and minds? How do you have a clear vision? How do you have a roadmap? How do you work with the tech and the humans as well? Like all these things, the process is so much goes into any transformation. In terms of now, because we can't ignore it, right? I mean, obviously we're still in, this global pandemic. It hasn't magically disappeared at the end of last year, unfortunately. Yeah. And the reality of that, I think, from a life perspective is, of course, we now have even more dispersed teams. We have more of this. And I'm so fascinated asking leaders about how are you navigating that? Have you had to up certain things or do things differently? Because for mine, and Mick, you and I talk about this all the time, even when you've got a really great culture and a great team, I still feel you've got to do things a bit differently or a bit more of certain things to make up for the missed chat in the kitchen and the spitballing of ideas in the office and all these sorts of things. So what's the impact been for your team? Have you felt that dispersed team impact more than before?
I think we all have, Alex, without a doubt. But on the other hand, we've actually seen this as a real opportunity for change within the organisation and to actually improve the way we work. So we have our support office in Melbourne, and we have 33 locations across the country where we serve members from bases. And so what we've done is taken the opportunity to actually decentralise a lot of our roles and go, you know what, you can do a support office role in Kapuka or Puckapunyal or Cerberus or wherever it is. And so we're actually, I think COVID has given us the trigger and almost the permission to break away from hierarchical thinking and traditional thinking and go, you know what, we trust you, you're going to do the job. If you need help, you can ask for it. And we know that you can do the job from anywhere. And we'll support you in that. So we're looking, I've actually just recently announced some changes in my team, which help set us up for our future state. And a big part of that is, giving people some confidence about the roles going forward, because I think with any change, people start wondering, is my job safe? So we've put that all to bed very early on. And then secondly, opened up the opportunity for people to perform roles in different locations. And what that takes in terms of making it work is just really good communication and, the ability to cut through the Zoom and that kind of barrier of the screen and still have a real conversation with each other.
So good. I love that it sparked innovation.
Massively.
And it sounds like an exceptionally positive change, providing a lot of opportunity for staff and empowering them.
Yes.
Now, in terms of the customer now and what customers and your members are going through, have you seen a change or an adjustment over the last, let's say, the recent history, since early last year till now? And where do you see, and how have you had to optimise your delivery model as a result of that?
Yeah, but there hasn't been as big an impact for our member base as there would be for other organisations, just given the nature of their work, being part of the Defence Force. And if anything, their employment has been incredibly stable. Defence is expanding and the work they do remains incredibly important in the community. So we've still got people on bases, and we've still got activity, and still got members engaging with us face to face. But certainly what COVID has done is open up, I think, people to better encouraging and wanting more digital ways of engaging, but still wanting that personal touch as well. And so you've kind of got to balance that. You've got to keep that personalised service, which is really important, but still offer the digital means of engaging as well.
We hear, sorry, Alex, I'll just jump in one follow-up one, from the relationship managed banks that specialise in private banking or commercial banking, SME banking, small medium enterprise, that is, as opposed to subject matter experts. They would invariably talk to us about their differentiation is always on the relationship managed component, and that is that their digital aspiration is that they have a very frictionless experience, but will never lose our human touch, and that's actually where we differentiate. So it feels like, that's very much the value proposition of Defence, given your deep domain expertise of what the defence industry require, and you're maintaining and elevating that by even decentralising functions and operations to give it back and empower.
Yeah. Absolutely. Our branches are incredibly important to us. They are our billboards, and they represent our heart and soul. And so it's creating that balance of ensuring that we're still driving a commercial return through a network where the demand has reduced to some extent, and ensuring that we're keeping our people busy with real value add member oriented activities to ensure that we can maintain that presence.
As always, I love these conversations about, like, we've kind of had the thread from the start about the role that technology plays, efficiency, process. And absolutely, I mean, when you've got bricks and mortar and you've got that billboard of that's a real investment, it's a property investment and all the staff. But I love, as always, we're talking about, well, the things that machines can do, but the things that machines can't do. And I think it's really great to talk about that, because then it's ironic, isn't it, Mick? Because we're always on digital transformation, and we talk, I reckon, equally about the tech and the humans. I'm interested to go a bit deeper. You said something before, Marnie, on that about upskilling your people and new roles, and it's evolving, and they're part of the design, which I love. And my head's a lot in the space of, what we're calling these uniquely human skills, which now more than ever are never going to be automated out. Things like empathy and resilience and social intelligence and cultural intelligence and all these things that when you talk about, the staff have more conversations and different discussions and storytelling and engagement in different ways, like machines cannot do that. So when you think about these kind of uniquely human skills, I mean, what do you see in terms of the things that are super important to really cultivate in your team around these sort of skills?
Well, I think, first of all, the machines are a really important input into then having the conversations. And what I'm referring to there is the data and insights that machines can provide,
Absolutely.
which give us that richness of insight into our members and what's going on in their lives, and where we might need to be proactive in reaching out to help them through something that might be changing within their lives. And so it's that combination of the two, the digital and the analogue world, as I intimated earlier, that I think creates kind of that beautiful synergy around being able to be really personal with a member. And so for us, the having really high quality conversations matters, but you need to have the right insights to be able to do that. And it's focusing the conversations on the things that matter. I don't want my people to be spending time, helping a member with something that they could do themselves over and over and over again. Doing it once or twice to show them how is okay, but following that, I want their time freed up to have more educational based conversations around setting up to have a really solid financial future. I've done a few LinkedIn posts of late as I've visited the branches, and one of the things that's quite unique to our members is they start work very early on in their career. They're 17 or 18, they're just babies, and they're joining the Defence Force, and they walk into one of our branches, and it's the first time they've really, for a lot of them, had exposure to banking and finance other than what mum and dad may or may not have told them. And so the role that our people play is really important in giving them education around the importance of saving, because for the first time they've suddenly got cash in their pocket and they want to burn it. So how do we help them, put some away to save and put some away to invest and put some away to give to the community, and those conversations matter, because a conversation that one of my staff have at a recruit branch, let's say at Kapuka, with a young cadet or trainee, in 6 years' time, as that member is buying their first home, it's that conversation 6 years ago that actually mattered. And so our members, they do have a long tenure with us because of that relationship we build as we help them through their life stages.
So important.
Yeah.
And
special.
Sorry, as you talk about business intelligence and having the empirical information to be able to inform the discussion, etc. What role do you see? Now a little bit more about that crossover of data and the use of data to be able to inform and help and support decision making, readily available information to be able to run the business more efficiently, help your staff have better conversations with customers, and essentially add more value to the customer. How do you see that playing out in terms of business intelligence? Supporting defences or more the industry, generally in banking. How important do you think that is, and what role do you think that has to play to be able to support, the evolution of banking and efficient decision making, efficient business?
Yeah, it's really important, Mick, and it needs to be used. That data needs to be used respectfully, with a genuine intent to help the member or help the customer. And I think that's where the financial institutions do that with the right intent will be the ones that win, versus those that maybe misuse it, if that makes sense. I think the way our people are supported to make decisions to help members. I think the Sedgwick Review back off the Royal Commission has certainly advanced the industry around that to ensure that bankers are customer and member focused rather than KPI focused. Those types of changes have been really, really important for the industry to make sure that the member or the customer is at the centre of that decision, and then the data can obviously help inform what that conversation looks like.
And a follow-up question, if I may, Alex, just on it's because it sort of talks to open banking in terms of enablement, and what do you see as the opportunity from an open banking perspective, and how banks can utilise the opportunity to better support their customers?
Yeah, I think what it will do is take a lot of the burden of information away from the customer and just make it easy for the customer to choose what they do, when they do it, how they do it, a lot more simply. And I think that's a good thing for the industry. It's a good thing for the customer, and certainly speeds up currently what can be quite cumbersome process held up by seeking verification of information at the moment. Yeah, so I think it's a really positive move for the industry, that's for sure. Yeah,
agree. So Marnie, I told you this would go fast, right? So we've got like 10 minutes or so left. It's like a vortex in here. So I want to turn the spotlight back onto you, because it's so good hearing you about industry and leadership and defence, all those things. But we do like to get a bit of the personal insights from your journey as well. And if you're comfortable, which I know you will, you mentioned before, how we were talking about just how we're always iterating and learning as a leader. And you mentioned, I learned from some of my failures. And we speak with leaders all the time on this show about, well, let's reframe failure exactly to the point of what you said, is that, you learn so much from different experiences. Are there any of those kind of moments that you could share with our audience where you might have at the time gone, wow, I really failed at that, maybe at the start of your career or along the way, that you can sort of share as a bit of a reframe for people watching going, oh gosh, yes, I'm so scared of failing?
I think one of the moments in my leadership where I do feel I could have been better was a time where, I was, I suppose you could call it, executing the orders of my leader. And it didn't feel right in my heart around what we were doing and how we were doing it. I was too afraid to speak up at the time, and so I followed the orders as my peers did as well. And I think the result of that is, my people saw that I wasn't being true to who I was, and the result of that is that whilst we achieved the objectives, it felt bad. It just didn't feel good, and so I really learned from that, and also learned that it's okay to speak up. And sometimes as a leader too, you don't have all the answers. Like, what I wish I did was actually sit down with my people and say, look, hey, this is the direction the organisation's going in. Doesn't quite feel right, but there's a purpose to this. How could we do it differently? And actually get the views of my people, rather than going, okay, I've been told to do this, so I'm going to do that. And this was years ago, but certainly something that I've always taken with me, that I don't need to have all the answers, and if something doesn't feel right, to actually talk about it, because often you'll end up with a much better way of achieving the same objective. Yeah.
And that resonates so strongly, and I see Mick nodding as well. I reckon that was the most liberating moment for me in my leadership journey, when I actually had the light bulb that, wow, my job is not to have all the answers, because, man, the pressure of that, it's impossible. It never happens. I feel like as young leaders, though, like, you kind of, unless you've got an exceptionally great mentor or leader who's kind of bringing you in, often you don't have a handbook, right? And so it's hard to kind of speak up, and if something doesn't feel right, but I've kind of been told to do this, this is all real. So, again, I love that we're talking about this, because I think it's super important to go, you know what, we don't have all the answers. And I think just to quickly go back on something else you said before about, there's no about your current journey at Defence. There's no corner on the 4th floor or whatever you said about, this kind of private thing. But I just wanted to go back to that, because, again, I think this is super important, because I think we're kind of all the same sort of vintage, but certainly some of my early leaders were very much, it's in the tent, there's only a few, and there's certain confidential things that, yes, you can't tell everyone, granted. But I think what we're talking about now, that was very old school about, no, you can't kind of tell the people, and you can't kind of share that you're not sure, because that's not what leaders do. And it's hopefully continuing to change so much, that old school kind of really hierarchical kind of leadership style, which just doesn't work for anyone. So I just wanted to call that out, because I think for a lot of our leaders tuning in as well, you probably are a bit, afraid sometimes, as you're saying, Marnie, to go, oh, can I really share actually how I'm feeling? And it's that vulnerability, isn't it? But I think from that comes such an incredible result from engaging humans. So I love that we're talking about that as well. Mick, over to you for the final drum roll question. And
I think we've just lost Alex.
I think we may have, she's back, but it's the last question.
I said over to you for the last question,
No, got it. I think we had a bit of a ricochet through the audio. But look, Marnie, I think on the same thread then, let's keep it on at a personal level, and I've had the pleasure of working with you previously, and we're talking offline, obviously, prior to this this session. A major part of your leadership value proposition is values-based leadership and support for your people. When I suppose, just a bit of insight into that, why for you have you built your value proposition around that, and why is that exceptionally important to yourself?
So my value proposition around psychological safety has probably, to be honest, come from a time where I didn't feel psychologically safe at work. And so knowing how that feels and how it impacted my performance and my leadership, it was a moment through my career that was really, really tough. But God, I'm grateful for it, because I learned so much. And what that did is made me a lot stronger as a leader, a lot more resilient. But it also made me go, you know what? I am never, ever going to put one of my people in a position that I was put in. And so with that, I'm quite passionate about this, that I want my people to experiment. I want them to be curious. I want them to make mistakes, because if we don't do that, we don't learn, we don't grow, we don't innovate. And so that's really where that comes from, Mick, is through a personal time of hurt that has now led to it being a really core part of my leadership style, and something that I'll never let go of, because I've seen now through years and years following that moment in time how that approach to my leadership is, I get the best out of people, and I've seen people grow and move into more senior roles and try roles that they never thought they were capable of, because they didn't think they had the skills. I'm like, nah, let's just give it a crack. You can do it. I believe in you. And I think it's that kind of approach that certainly is going to help us with this transformation as well, because like I said earlier, Alex, and you picked up on it, we're not going to get everything right, but you know what? We're going to give it a bloody good go. We're going to make some mistakes. We'll learn from it, and we will succeed. I have absolute confidence around that, because we've got the whole organisation behind the change, the whole organisation believing in the change, and an organisation incredibly passionate about their members and the reason that we exist, which is to serve those who protect us. And that belief, and combined with creating an environment where people can experiment, I think will fare us really well.
And it's a brilliant insight. We just to share an anecdote from our organisation. One of our executives has year on year just had our exemplary employee engagement. To the extent that all the staff are 100% pro on the way he's leading the business unit. And so we recently asked him to do a presentation to give insight around how he treats his people and what he goes about the steps. And he said, the simple the way I lead and the way I've modelled my leadership has been, think about the best boss you've ever had. And replicate all those things they do, and think about the bosses where you felt the most uncomfortable, the most unsatisfied, and most at risk, and make sure you don't do that to your people. And through those lessons, he's set an environment very similar to what's really been important to yourself, and that was where he was most vulnerable. He felt like he never wanted to put his people in that position again. So anyway, just an anecdote. So I think wonderful validation for how that works.
I love it, because I think this is at the heart of the important why we have these conversations. We talk about interesting things, hopefully for our audience, certainly for us. But I love this, because even the fact that, we do share moments of personal hurt, or when we didn't feel safe, from that comes what we're talking about, which is where you build trust with other human beings. You can do, I got goosebumps, Marnie, I don't mind saying, when you're talking about that, because there's no doubt, and we all know, when you've got such a clear purpose and mission and a team that's behind it and want to do something great, it actually kind of doesn't matter that all the steps aren't obvious or stuff goes wrong. And I think we've all seen or probably worked with organisations where that's kind of that regimented, everything's, every T's crossed and I's dotted, but the people bit isn't there. And, I think we've all experienced that. And that's why I love having conversations. So, look, thank you so much. We always say this, Mick, don't we, that the time, you think 45 minutes, but it goes so fast, because I feel there's so much we can chat about. So we normally try and co-opt our amazing guests on for a second episode, Marnie, so watch this space. But thank you so much for sharing your time, your experience, your views, and loving what's happening at Defence Bank. Would you believe both my business partners are probably members, because they're both veterans. So there you go. But look, thanks for being on the show. And Mick, thanks as always for being an awesome co-host, and looking forward to the next episode coming up soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thank you.